I'm an older guy in my late 40s, and for work, I'm part of a team that travels across the country to train employees at our company. The company pays for our travels and hotels, and while sometimes it does somewhat feel like a vacation, usually it doesn't. When traveling, we have to work long hours, spending the entire day in the office, leaving us just enough time to sleep at the hotel before waking up and going back to work. It's exhausting and feels more like a grind than any sort of holiday. I was on one of these work trips and had been at a hotel for a few days. It was a Saturday night when I got out of work and returned to the hotel a little past 10. I walked inside and noticed how eerily quiet the entire place was. The lobby was deserted, and not a soul was in sight. There wasn't anyone walking around, not even in the elevator. A strange stillness hung in the air, like the hotel itself was holding its breath. When I reached my floor, I stepped out and began walking down the hallway. The place was dark and quiet, with only the soft hum of the lights overhead. But then, as I walked toward my door, I noticed someone standing at the end of the hallway. They were right in front of my door, or at least it looked like they were. I was too far to be certain, but as I approached, the person noticed me. Without a word, they turned and walked into a room a few doors down. I stood there for a moment, confused, trying to piece together what had just happened. What was he doing near my door? Was he at mine or the room next to it? My thoughts raced, but I let it go for the time being. I shrugged it off and went into my room, telling myself it was probably nothing. I took a quick shower, hoping to shake off the odd encounter, and then climbed into bed. I had another long day of work ahead of me, so I wasn't trying to overthink things. Right before bed, I drifted off to sleep, exhausted from the day's events. But I woke up multiple times throughout the night, each time to the sound of someone walking outside my room. The footsteps were slow, deliberate, like they were pacing back and forth. At one point, I thought I heard a knock on the door, but I wasn't sure if it was part of a dream or if it was real. My mind was foggy, but something about it felt off. A sense of dread settled over me, but I couldn't place why. I tried to ignore it and went back to sleep, but the unsettling feeling lingered. The next morning, I woke up still tired and dragged myself to work. The day was long and I didn't get back to the hotel until late, around 9, I think. It was earlier than the previous night, and I was hoping for a quiet evening to unwind. I walked up to my room, but this time, the hallway was empty. No one was around. I felt a strange sense of relief, but it was fleeting. I tossed my work bag on the couch, then crawled into bed. I decided to watch some TV before sleeping, something to distract me. I reached for the remote on the nightstand and turned on a random show, one I didn't even care about. I must have dozed off quickly, because I woke up with a start just before 10. The sound of a phone ringing pierced through the haze of sleep. I looked over at the nightstand, but as I gained more consciousness, I realized something was wrong. The ringing wasn't coming from my phone, which wasn't even on. My heart began to race. I snapped my head toward the closet next to the TV, and then, suddenly, the ringing stopped. A cold chill ran through my body, and I froze. There, in the crack between the closet doors, I saw the faintest movement, a shadow. My blood ran cold as I processed what I was seeing. Someone was in there. My mind raced, and my body responded before I could fully think. I jumped out of bed, adrenaline flooding my system. I didn't even bother grabbing my phone. I bolted straight for the door, sprinting down the hallway and heading straight for the stairs. I wasn't thinking about anything other than getting help. I ran to the front desk, panting, desperate to explain. They called security immediately, and it didn't take long for them to respond. A few minutes later, security arrived at my room. They went inside to search, and after just 30 seconds, they came back out holding a man. The same man I had seen in the hallway before. Couldn't believe it. He didn't even try to run away, didn't make a sound when they grabbed him. They said he had been hiding in the closet, just sitting there. As far as I know, the guy had no idea who I was or why he was there. When they questioned him, he gave no answers, no reason for breaking into my room and hiding in the closet. His silence made the situation all the more terrifying. Knowing that he had been sitting there, just inches from me at the end of my bed, watching through the crack in the closet doors, makes my body shake. The thought that he might have been there for who knows how long, waiting for the right moment, is enough to send chills down anyone's spine. I guess he was just crazy, but the possibilities of what could have happened if his phone hadn't rung haunt me. I don't know what his plan was, but it terrifies me to think about it. This happened to me during a business trip I took last year for work. I had just arrived at the hotel and picked up my room key, which my company had covered. The hotel looked nice from the outside, though it was a bit smaller than most others I'd stayed at. There were maybe 30 to 40 rooms in total, spread across 3 stories. My room was on the top floor, so I made my way to the elevator and pressed the button for the highest floor. As the elevator ascended, I felt a strange sense of unease, something I couldn't quite put my finger on. The ride was smooth, but the quiet, empty spaces of the hotel made it feel more isolated than it probably should have. When the elevator doors opened, I stepped out into the quiet hallway. It was narrow and dimly lit, with the faint smell of cleaning supplies lingering in the air. I placed my bags by the door and reached into my pocket for the room key. Just as I was about to unlock the door, the neighboring room's door creaked open. A man stepped into the hallway. He looked a bit out of place, dressed casually, with a blank but friendly expression on his face. He greeted me, mentioning that he was my neighbor, and held out his hand for a handshake. I was caught off guard and a bit confused, but I shook his hand politely. I introduced myself, but it felt strange. Why would someone come out of their room just to greet me? Maybe he was just being friendly, but something didn't sit right. He went back into his room and shut the door behind him. I stood there for a moment, wondering what that was all about, but I shrugged it off. Some people are just like that, I guess. I unpacked my small suitcase and duffel bag, and then collapsed onto the bed, exhausted. It had been a long day of travel, and I was looking forward to a good night's sleep. I turned on the TV, but I wasn't paying much attention. My eyelids were heavy. After a quick shower, I turned off all the lights, trying to settle in for the night. It took a while, but eventually, I managed to get comfortable. As I lay there in the dark, I could hear the faint creaking of the neighbor's door opening. At first, I thought it was just my mind playing tricks on me, but then I saw a shadow moving just outside the sliver of light under my door. The shadow lingered for a moment, getting closer before pulling away and continuing down the hall. My heart rate picked up. I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. I got out of bed and checked all the locks on the door, making sure everything was secure. After double-checking, I went back to bed, trying to brush it off as just my nerves getting the best of me. The next day was packed with meetings and a presentation, followed by a business dinner. By the time I returned to the hotel that night, it was already 10 p.m. and I was dead tired. I tossed my work bag onto the bed and went straight to the shower, hoping to unwind before getting some rest. The warm water helped relax me, and I stood under it for a good 10 minutes, trying to shake off the weariness of the day. Suddenly, I heard the distinct beep of the electronic door lock unlocking. My heart stopped. It was too late for housekeeping, and I couldn't think of any reason why someone would be unlocking my door. My mind immediately went to the strange man next door, but how could he have a key to my room? I stood there frozen, my pulse racing as I listened to the door open and then softly close. Footsteps echoed in the hallway, slowly walking past the bathroom door. They had to know I was in there. The thought terrified me. I held my breath, hoping they wouldn't hear the water running, hoping they wouldn't notice me. I stepped out of the shower as quietly as I could, grabbed a pair of pants from the ground, and slipped them on. I hurriedly locked the bathroom door and pressed my ear against it, listening intently. I could hear faint sounds, like someone rummaging through my bags. My body went cold with fear. I wanted to confront them, but I knew I had no idea what this person might be capable of. For all I knew, they could have been armed, and I was helpless in that moment. My mind raced, but I couldn't think of a single way to escape or defend myself. The silence that followed was worse than the noises. Had they gone? Were they still there? I wasn't sure. The room felt suffocating, every minute stretching longer than the last. But then, I heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps running away, quickly fading as they retreated down the hallway. I didn't hesitate. I rushed out of the bathroom, slammed the door shut behind me, and locked it as quickly as I could. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand with trembling hands and dialed 911. I didn't know who this person was or why they were in my room, but I wasn't going to wait any longer to get help. Once I had called the police, I reached out to the front desk, alerting them to the situation. I could barely speak, my voice shaking from the adrenaline. By the time the authorities arrived, the man was long gone. The police tracked him down a few hours later, finding him in his car parked nearby. I don't know what happened to him after that. As far as I know, he didn't serve any jail time. They couldn't prove he had any harmful intent, but I could never shake the feeling that he was there for something far worse than just a harmless prank. I don't know if he was planning to rob me, kidnap me, or something else entirely, but I'm sure he had a motive. The whole experience still haunts me. Sometimes I lie awake at night, thinking about what could have happened if I hadn't heard those footsteps, or if I hadn't locked the door in time. I'll never know for sure, but it's a close call I'll never forget. I was on a road trip for work, driving down a long, empty highway to my next hotel. It wasn't a particularly notable place, just a cheap hotel in a town I had never heard of. It was conveniently located right off the highway, which was the only reason I booked it. The road was desolate. I drove for hours without passing many other cars. Occasionally, I'd spot one or two vehicles on the stretch of road, but otherwise the highway felt completely isolated. Then, after a while, I noticed something strange. A set of headlights appeared in my rearview mirror, closing in behind me. At first, I didn't think much of it. After all, it was just another car on the road. But for the next 3 hours, that car stayed behind me. No matter how fast or slow I drove, it remained in my rearview mirror, maintaining the same distance between us on this massive, empty highway. It felt odd, but I tried to brush it off as nothing more than a coincidence. When I reached the exit for the hotel, I took the off-ramp and pulled into the parking lot. To my surprise, the car behind me followed. The driver parked on the other side of the hotel lot. It was a strange coincidence that the same car had been behind me for hours and ended up at the same destination, but I convinced myself it was just luck, albeit a weird one. The hotel itself wasn't much to look at. From the outside, it was old and small, the only building off the highway. There were no nearby restaurants or houses, just empty stretches of road in every direction. When I booked the hotel, I had thought it was in a town, but I was clearly mistaken. I grabbed my bag, stepped out of my car, and walked into the building. The woman at the front desk checked me in and handed me a key card to my room. Considering how old the place looked, I was half surprised they even had key card doors and not traditional locks. I walked down the hallway to my room. The hotel was small, only a few rooms per floor, and the place had a strange, quiet air. I had to scan my key card multiple times before it finally worked. The door clicked open with a creak, and I stepped inside. The room was old-fashioned and small, but it was clean and well-kept, which was all I cared about. I set my things down, unpacked what I needed for the night, and tried to relax. Just moments after I finished unpacking, there was a knock at my door. I peered through the peephole and saw a man standing in the hallway. I had never seen him before, and he didn't look like he worked at the hotel. It was strange for a guest to knock on someone else's door, especially in a place this empty. I chose to ignore him. There was something unsettling about the situation. Maybe it was the isolation of the hotel, or maybe it was just my instinct, but I wasn't about to open the door. The man didn't knock again, and eventually the hallway grew quiet again. I finished what I was doing, took a shower, and climbed into bed. I turned on the TV and watched one of the random free movies the hotel offered, then eventually fell asleep, though I wasn't sure what time it was, probably around 12 or 1 a.m. I woke up later, disoriented and exhausted. The room was completely dark, and I felt groggy, but something wasn't right. In the haze between sleep and wakefulness, I began hearing a beeping sound, constant and repetitive, almost like the sound of an electronic lock being tampered with. I couldn't quite place it at first. My mind wandered, but then, all of a sudden, the sound hit me fully, and I snapped awake. I jumped out of bed and flicked on the lamp. As soon as the light illuminated the room, the beeping stopped, but then I heard it, the sound of footsteps running down the hallway. My heart raced. I sprinted to the door and threw it open, looking down the hallway, but I must have barely missed him. A few seconds later, I saw the woman from the front desk at the end of the hall, looking nervously down at me. I asked her if she had seen anyone running. She nodded, her face pale. "A man just ran out into the parking lot," she said, her voice shaky. I looked outside, and there he was, a man getting into the car that had been behind me on the highway. He backed out and sped away, tires screeching as he tore back onto the highway. I rushed back to the front desk and asked the woman for more details. She told me the man had just walked in a few minutes earlier and headed straight down the hall. She thought he had a room here, but then, a minute later, she saw him sprinting out, looking frantic. That's when I told her about the strange incident that had happened while I was in my room. I had woken up to the sound of a key card trying to unlock my door. It was terrifying, knowing that my key card had taken several tries to work. I couldn't shake the thought that he might have had the right one, just one more attempt away from getting inside. The fact that he had a key card at all sent a chill through me. The police weren't much help. They couldn't find the man, and no one could explain how he had a key card to my room. The whole situation was bizarre, and I was left with more questions than answers. I did some research on my own, and I stumbled across a discussion about fake universal key cards that could work on some random hotel doors. It was unsettling to think that something so simple could make a hotel stay feel so unsafe. I don't know what that man was trying to do, or what would have happened if I hadn't woken up. I'll never know for sure, but I do know this: I won't be staying at any more hotels for a long time.